We'll call the meeting to order, our May 22nd, 2024 meeting at 10:06 a.m. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. And we do have some people that are probably joining remotely today. We'll see which members choose to join remotely. Secretary Dunn will join us in just a moment. She's upstairs just wrapping up a couple things. Our officers did meet with Cindy prior to this meeting to talk through some issues. There are things that are on the agenda and a couple things that are just timely in nature. We will have several presentations today on DCNR's Next Generation Council, on the Bureau of Forestry Strategic Plan, which I know a number of CONRAC members have spent quality time with over the last several weeks during in-person and virtual meetings. And then we'll have an update on the SCORP, the Statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan from Brandon Hoover. So a lot of very timely updates and hopefully some good discussion along the way. We will begin by going around and doing introductions. And I think it's important to also note that Thad Taylor is with us as a new member of CONRAC. And maybe we'll start with you, and if you don't mind just introducing yourself to council. There you go.
Good morning. I'm Thad Taylor, forester from Coudersport, Pennsylvania.
Welcome. Marcus, do you want to go next and we'll go around the circle?
Yes. Good morning, Council. Marcus, President and CEO of the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition, coming to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pleasure to see everyone on a sunny, beautiful day. Hope everyone's enjoying their outdoor recreation in some way. So great to see everyone.
We just noted that it seems to only rain on the weekends now, so we enjoy the nice weather looking out the window. But maybe we'll get a nice weekend here eventually. Ephraim.
Hi, I'm Ephraim Zimmerman, Western Pennsylvania Conservancy Heritage Program Science Director from Pittsburgh. Nice to see everybody.
Hi, I'm Geraldine Umstead Singer and from Dauphin County, caregiver and volunteer at the time, but used to be working for DCNR years ago.
Good morning. I'm Meredith Graham from Washington County. I'm an environmental lawyer by profession, but currently a family caregiver.
Good morning. My name is Rocco Ally. I've been a council member for several years, living in Armstrong County, and represent the outdoor hunters and fishermen.
Bob Kirshner, St. Mary's in Elk County. I'm a member of local rail trail board, and I'm also heavily involved in motorized recreation, especially snowmobiling.
Good morning. I'm Ken Kane from Kane, Pennsylvania, in McKean County, giving you all an unfair advantage. The big lummox from Kane, named Kane. So I'm a forester, retired forester by profession. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm Silas Chamberlain. In my day job, I work with the York County Economic Alliance doing economic development in southern, south central Pennsylvania.
Hi, good morning. Nicole Farraguna. I am the policy director at DCNR.
Good morning. I'm Jerry Walls, retired executive director of Lycoming County Planning. I'm still involved with the Pine Creek Rail Trail, the Advisory Committee, and the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership. And the
Gary, your microphone is unmuted. Sorry.
Yeah, hit it again. There you go. You're good. Oh, wait. Now you're good.
Okay, I'm Jerry Walls. Do I need to repeat?
Most of us in the room heard it. I think you're good. Thanks. I think you could sum it up by saying you wear about a dozen different hats, right?
Look at the bright.
We also have Sarah Hall, who's a CONRAC member, joining us virtually. Sarah, do you just want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. Sorry I can't be there in person. Sarah Hall, Director of Forestry for the American Forest Foundation Family Forest Carbon Program, currently residing in Lackawanna County and an avid trail user and mountain biker.
Thanks, Sarah. And Morgan, you let yourself be passed over down there. And we'll also introduce those in the audience just for the benefit of everyone at the table. Brandon, you're over here. You want to start? And
Hi, Eric Nelson, Director of Legislative Affairs.
Oh, good.
great. Thanks for joining us. All right. So now we'll entertain any public comments. I don't know if we've received any virtually. I don't believe there are any in the room. Anything come in via the chat? No. Okay. So we'll have a second public comment period at the end of the meeting. We'll move on to approval of the prior minutes. You should have received these via email previously and had a chance to review them. Are there any revisions or questions on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll enter.
Move they be approved.
There you go, Jerry. That's motion made by Jerry. Second. Did Rocco say second? Okay, Rocco. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Our minutes are approved. Thank you.
Silas, I just had a couple questions that I'd like to ask Secretary Dunn on the $4 million increase in the general fund, the governor's budget, proposed budget. How did that plan out?
I'm spending
One more time, I think there.
3 times the charm.
Now you're good. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I'm spending a lot of my time over to Capitol promoting the governor's budget with the legislature. I haven't gotten pushback on it.
Oh, good.
But I think the question on the table between the legislature and the governor is there's money sitting there. And the question is, do we put that money into action to elevate Pennsylvania and to create opportunities to create more income to help Pennsylvania in the long run? Or do you not invest that money and let it sit? Or as one proposal from the Senate was to give it back to people. The money's there. A lot of it's due to the federal programs that have come since COVID to really generate economy, improve the quality of life, generate permanent improvement. So our specific pitches relate to the governor's aspiration of helping economy, our 8.5 million in additional money for trails and people to build and maintain trails. I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
The workforce for the outdoor corps. Yeah, I'll mention that when we get to that.
Gary, any other questions on the minutes? Okay. So we'll move on to our council report. I just have a couple things. Once again, welcome to the new members. Thad, welcome. Sierra Fogel is also joining us. Some of you may know Sierra from Pocono Whitewater. Her family is involved in whitewater outfitting, paintball, and outdoor sports in the Jim Thorpe area along the Lehigh Gorge. Her father, Paul, has been actively involved in the outdoor recreation economy for decades. So great perspective coming onto council from a business perspective and just a long-term partner of DCNR. She is, ironically, I think, at a Convention and Visitors Bureau event up in the region today, so can't join us, but will be with us in July. So you get a chance to meet her there if you don't know her. And also, Ken, I know this, I believe this is your second meeting, but still fresh, so welcome again. Thanks for being here. And kudos to the DCNR team and to the legislature for advancing these nominations. It's been great to fill these vacancies and have it happen relatively quickly, which is not always the case. So it's good to have a pretty full CONRAC right now. Also wanted to say thank you to the CONRAC members who spent time over the last several weeks with Bureau of Forestry, working on their strategic plan, going to one of the 2 in-person sessions. or attending online for some of the focus sessions. I thought they were really useful, and I thought the DCNR team did a really good job in getting diverse audience in the room for those conversations, representing a variety of interest in state forests. So those were productive, and I won't dwell on that. I think we can provide some feedback during the presentation today on any of your takeaways from those sessions. But thank you, Meredith, for laying out a very easy way for all of us to be engaged and cover those meetings. And I think it worked really well. So thanks. Also, thank you to the members who provided feedback on the ATV policy update. I know Nicole will touch on this in a moment as sort of a final call on any comments on that. And this is just a good example, I think, of where CONRAC can be a good sounding board, even on very straightforward policy updates, just to say, are there any, additional perspectives? I know Bob provided a couple comments related to terms of easements and access to land. Meredith reviewed it, and a couple of others. So thank you for taking the time. We also, at our last meeting, approved our letter to DCNR on the ATV regional connector. And I'm not going to say pilot because we're no longer saying pilot, monitoring report. And that was passed along to DCNR leadership, and I believe to legislative leadership as well. So that was several months in the making. I wasn't at the last meeting, so just wanted to extend thanks for your approval on that and all the time put into developing those thoughts.
And I think that the ATV, that our physical tour, an interview of that pilot, and the testimony that we had from those who had concerns about it the next day, all of that was very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Bob recently, and I'm sure you'll talk about this a little later, facilitated a good discussion with Bureau of Forestry on next steps related to that with the multi-jurisdictional authority that has been proposed for the region. Also, just a few notes. I saw this week PA launched its new tourism brand, and it won't be a surprise that the outdoors and DCNR funded projects and DCNR public lands play very prominently in that brand, which is the Great American Getaway, which to me is all like a bank robbery, like people are doing a burnout, but I get it, the double entendre. But it makes perfect sense. And, obviously when this was rolled out, I saw Nathan Regner in the background. So the connection between the Office of Outdoor Recreation, which CONRAC has been very involved with, and this new tourism brand, which, should see a lot of investment in the coming years, is really strong. So it was just nice to see that reflected there and see some of those DCNR projects get good promotion. I saw the DNL Trail in there, Great Allegheny Passage, and I think maybe the PA Grand Canyon. So a lot of good clips of state lands and state projects. Thank you, Secretary Dunn, for your letter on Cuffs Run and the proposed pumped energy storage in southeastern York County. We provided that to council as an email attachment. Like I said in the email, I don't believe there's a role for CONRAC to play in commenting on that project, in part because it's so highly regulated by FERC that a letter one way or another from CONRAC's not going to make a difference. But I think it's an important project to track. And it was good to see DCNR weigh in, along with, I think, every member of the delegation from York County had a similar opinion on the project as well. So if you have an interest in Cuffs Run, we can certainly keep you updated, but it's really in the hands of FERC to decide if that project's permitted to move forward now. For the benefit of people listening in during our working session, we will discuss and updates from our working groups, but I also want to talk about future CONRAC conversations and hopefully build that pipeline back out a little bit. These were the periodic educational webinars that we had been hosting on topics of importance to CONRAC, and had a lot of success with webinars on DEI, on the outdoor recreation economy, on climate capture and storage. So really want to try to brainstorm what some good topics would be for the future, so we can still get at least one in later this year and hopefully build out for the future. Nicole will provide a little more detail on this, and we can certainly talk about it during our working session, but we're also looking forward to late July 23rd and 24th for our CONRAC field visit. to Tunkhannock and Vosburgh Neck State Park and Miller Mountain, quite a few different projects there. Just like our visit last year to the ATV connector, be good to see firsthand some of the work that's going on, particularly with the new state parks. And that'll really be our theme, is how is, DCNR incorporating these parks into the system? How are they benefiting local stakeholders? And we'll hear from a number of them, including outfitters and elected officials. So it'll be a good visit. So thank you to those who are going to make the trip and hopefully come in the day before and spend some time in the field as well. And I want to close by saying congratulations to Nicole and Secretary Dunn and the DCNR team for their work on the Duke Low MOA. And the result from the National Guard in sort of halting the plans to expand that area across the PA wilds. There were, a lot of dynamic to that, but I think it was a lot of consensus from folks in the PA wilds and from policymakers and elected officials that it wasn't a good fit for the region. So I know a lot of work went on behind the scenes to make that happen. And
Congratulations.
congratulations.
An important point about the consensus. It's not often that all of us out there in the wilds have common views. But that certainly was one that we did.
Yeah, it's normally a good sign when you get everybody to agree on something. So that's all I have in my report. Are there any other DCN or CONRAC updates anyone would want to provide, keeping in mind that we'll have time for our working groups to provide an update later on? All right, so with that, we will move over to Secretary Dunn.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I was a little late coming down and missed the intros, but I'd just like to join you in welcoming the new members. Sarah Fogel's not here, but we've gotten to know Sarah as a concessionaire operator on the Lehigh Gorge, and when we did an event with the governor earlier it was late last year. Sarah was one of the speakers alongside the governor and myself, opening the boat launch area. And the governor got to talk to Sarah and really impressed by her business acumen as running an outdoor recreation business. And I think that was influential in the governor's thinking and understanding of outdoor related businesses and their value to the community and to the economy. Thad Taylor, welcome to Thad. We've heard such great things about you, a wonderful resume. You bring decades of experience in the forest products industry, Forecon's Director of Corporate Strategy. I guess there was introductions before I came, so I won't go too deep on that, but we're happy to welcome you to CONRAC, and I hope you find it rewarding that the public service involved with citizens spending time to interact with the agencies that serve the public is really valuable public service, and we appreciate your commitment to that and your stepping up. On the Duke Low MOA, I do need to mention, Nicole won't say it about herself, but if there's one person responsible for this victory, it's Nicole. She raised the issue with not only our governor, who immediately understood the concern, but was in contact with Congressman Thompson's office, who JT was right in there early on the issue. Our two senators from Pennsylvania were both Casey and Fetterman weighed in heavily. There was a lot of consensus, as Jerry said, in the region. And I guess the thing that really rubbed me the wrong way is, from sitting in a Air Force base down in Maryland, they see a blank spot in the map and thought to themselves, these people won't care or won't fight this. And boy, were they wrong. The identity of the wilds and the people's understanding of how special that region is, how special they are, I think played into the decision. The Air Force discontinuing the A-10s, of course, was an important factor as well. But when a flyaway's committed, then other planes can be added into that, and so that was that opening of the airways for that would have opened it for other planes, and then the 100 feet was just unbelievable when you think about the cell towers and communication towers popping up like daily across the landscape, and wondering what that meant for safety. And then the jobs, if you look at the the jobs in the region, a lot of people work shift jobs and are trying to sleep in the daytime, and an F-10 or any plane buzzing over home where someone's sleeping, getting ready for the third shift is really not acceptable. So it was just all kinds of human interaction, wildlife interaction that's not in fitting with Pennsylvania wilds. But switching gears to our Pennsylvania military bases, Fort Indian Gap and in Letterkenny and such, valued partners in the landscape of Pennsylvania, and working with them and other partners, the Kittatinny Ridge Sentinel Landscape was selected. It's going to be a thing. The partnership was announced with the designation of the Kittatinny Ridge Sentinel Landscape. And for those who don't know, Kittatinny is that first line of mountains, just west of Harrisburg, and it strings all the way up, through about 12 counties, Franklin, Fulton, Cumberland, Dauphin, Lebanon, on east, and where the Kittatinny exits the state. This ridge is being protected by a conservation landscape initiative, that the Kittatinny Conservation Landscape Initiative, identified by the Nature Conservancy as a key climate resiliency corridor. It's a major flyway corridor for birds and also for the Pennsylvania Guard, who uses it for their training mission. The military operations around Fort Indian Gap and some other places really do better with a buffer. People like me that grew up right next to Fort Indian Gap were used to the China closet rattling once in a while with bomb practice and missions. But for new people in the region, it's always a shocker. So the idea is that willing landowners would put their land in an easement for conservation or sell their land, that would create a better buffer around military installations here in Pennsylvania. And the educational opportunities, the partnerships around these sentinel landscapes serve many purposes, everything from working landscapes to conserved landscapes to buffers that the private landowners really want to keep their land in conservation or in agriculture through an easement program. Anyway, we're just launching that. Again, kudos to Nicole for being on our team of folks that really organized this, Bureau of Recreation and Conservation, Claire Jans. So it was a team effort in DCNR working with our Conservation Landscape Initiative lead for that, Kristen Hand from the Geologic Survey. But anyway, it's a huge success and fantastic news when that was announced. And speaking of announcements, I was up in Scranton on Monday with the governor, where he rolled out the Pennsylvania, the Great American Getaway. And as you think about the research that went into this brand, Pennsylvania's in driving distance from 72 million people. People tend to use vacations in Pennsylvania as kind of a getaway, like a long weekend, if they live in DC or New Jersey or somewhere else, and Pennsylvanians travel in-state. Pennsylvania is long enough that, when you go up to Erie, you're a tourist, you're traveling, you're overnighting. So in-state travel is a big thing in Pennsylvania. So the Great American Getaway made sense as a brand. And governor's got an RV that's been rented, and it's got a wrap, what they call a wrap on it, with colors and images from across the state. You'll see a lot of our stuff in the imagery, and is traveling and camping and visiting all across Pennsylvania to talk to partners and mainly tourism focused folks along the way. Kind of exciting, and state parks are mentioned really prominently. State parks kind of being the bucket for all outdoors and imagery for the public. But online is a video of the governor speaking about it, a video of of the brand rollout you can find easily on, maybe we can send that around to everybody just so you can see it. But you'll see DCNR is mentioned very prominently in the role of public lands and state parks to the main streets of the communities of Pennsylvania is made really clearly. So that's a really neat connection, that the recognition that economy of their local communities is dependent on the outdoor recreation that surrounds them. So that was exciting for us. As was mentioned, as Jerry asked about the budget, besides the boost that we're asking for in our operating budget, we're asking for additional 8.5 million for stack loop trail systems. Like, these are the mountain bike trail systems that are really well designed, well built, that are attracting travelers and people to go experience them. Good example, if you want to see one, is stop at Mustard Gap near State College. And you see the trail goes into the community, but it goes into the Rothrock Forest, and then there's a set of really well-developed and designed and built trail loops that can be used for equestrians, foot traffic, and bikes. And these are the kind of like designed, like recreational destination trails. So we're looking for money to staff up in forestry, especially with trail crews and parks, and then look for the right places where these can be built and then connected to community. We're also asking for 5 million for the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps, grow that program. The workforce element of that's been very positive. The program has been really successful. Labor and industry has funded it, and what this additional 5 million would be a reauthorization of the reemployment fund that goes through L&I, but it would give us money to staff it up better, to have regional staff all over the landscape, all over Pennsylvania, like a regional staff, 4 regional staff, to help us develop better pipelines to young people to recruit into the Outdoor Corps, get relationships with key teachers, to really diversify our workforce that's coming into the Outdoor Corps. But it's been such a successful program. We've placed 50 some staff in the department. Some of them are park managers, some of them are in the maintenance and trades. Some of them are various forestry. We've placed people from the Outdoor Corps into our staff. Other state agencies have, and private sector has placed these well-trained young people into their program. So we just want to grow the program, and that lift is for that purpose. Update on Silas mentioned the Conrax following the new state parks and their development. We set up a task force at Big Elk Creek to try to bring together the varied public opinions around that. And so the John Hallis co-leads the task force with a local citizen who's in the White Clay Creek Friends group. And they've held a couple of the meetings that they want to staff, to look at the plans, look at the master plan, walk the ground, come to a common understanding of the best development plan for that park. Grants, BRC's grant deadline closed on April 11th. We saw a record number of grant applications. We don't have a record amount of money. So we will be making hard decisions. And I think it points to a need to grow the grant funding streams as much as we can to really meet the community needs that are out there. This shows that the appetite for community-based recreation is higher than ever. Appetite for land conservation is higher than ever, and supporting that. Because it's kind of heartbreaking to say no to a good project that's ready to go, and we just can't stretch the dollars far enough. Under hot topics, Kinser Bridge. So anyone that stood on it, anyone stood on it in the wind, wonders, is it safe? And it is, but like all, think about that. It was designed to be a bridge, with engineers, that string across was part of the support. It's designed for heavy trains downward, not so much for sideways wind, as was demonstrated by its collapse. So it's safe, but to ensure its longevity, we got to get in there and do some repairs and work and bolstering the structure. It is a major economic draw for the region. The tourism up there really revolves a lot around the Skywalk. It's been so popular. So we were faced with a challenge of how to do these repairs. Of course, you do close them down for that. The project will go out for bid on May 30th. Hopefully we get a lot of good bidders. Closure will begin on November 19th this year. They'll start some work early 25, and we're aiming for completion on 27. It's a long time, but there'll be periods of time when in there that it's open for the public. We'll put it out to bid in such a way that they see that there's windows that the public's got access to the bridge and windows that they can do their work to try to lessen the impact on the local economy that this will have. And there'll be temporary closures coming up in September, October, just temporary closures to get equipment out there and mobilized and measured measurements for ordering the materials. So up in your neck of the woods, that'll be big news. It's unfortunate that the impact it might have on the tourism, but we should all think together on how to blunt that impact and there's a lot of great things up there. The trail, for instance, Noxicane Trail gets longer and more connected. The towns have done a good job of enhancing the amenities they have there. And of course, there are trails to walk at Kindred Bridge Park, and we have its sister park nearby. So we'll just all think about how to keep the tourism going, how to keep the economy rolling, how to keep visitors engaged, and despite this very important fix on the Kindred Bridge. So we don't want any repeat disasters there. So we just gotta maintain it well. Even though the engineering studies show it's safe. It's safe now. We do close it down when the wind's over, I think 20 or 25. We do that's partly, it's for a lot of reasons. Number one, it moves a little. That alone isn't mean it's good, a big problem, but people's hats blow away and stuff like that. It's just makes sense to close it when there's high wind. And that's it for me.
All right. Any questions for Secretary Dunn?
One comment about the Kinzu Bridge is there's a lot of people that are so connected to that bridge. They're really anxious for the construction project. And I think there's an opportunity to actually enhance tourism because all the railroad buffs are really wanting to see what you're going to do and are really, how would I say, they feel part of the bridge. So they want to see that construction go.
Well, that's interesting. Railroad tourism is a thing. Here in the Enola Yards, the Enola Rail Yards here was one of the biggest rail yards in the state, in the country or something. But there's railroad watchers that in the overpass bridges near the rail yards that have holes so that photographers can get their lenses through. No, you're right. That's a good point. We should connect with the if there's key leaders of the railroad interests up there. Can you let us know? We'll see in a few weeks. Put us in touch with them. That's a great idea to have them. I don't know if they, they're on social media a lot, but have them involved is a great idea.
Madam Secretary, Tim Palmer wanted me to express to you his appreciation for your hospitality and how you, got him involved.
Yeah, we're very excited. A guy named Tim Palmer has written about 25 books.
33
books. He's a prolific nature writer, written many books. He worked under Jerry, so he got a good start in his career as a planner in Lycoming County, and he's lived in Oregon, but he's still very attached to the region. He's written books about the Youghiogheny, books about things in the West, books about forests.
The Lostock Trail, Pine Creek Trail, Black Forest Trail. Those are all some of the featured stories of the Susquehanna.
Yeah, it's going to be a great book. So we're excited. He's coming back and doing another Pennsylvania book.
Yeah.
Just a question. I promise this not because I saw Nathan Regner's name pop up a second ago to enter the room, and I had it written down. The positions that Nathan's been working to add to the Office of Outdoor Recreation, are those still open? Or are you in the process of filling those?
Nathan I guess I'm supposed to say, yeah. So I know Nathan's busy and Gretchen's busy interviewing right now. They're sorting through a big pile of wonderful, bright-eyed people with a lot of choices to have and probably some hard decisions coming.
Great, that sounds good. And then the only other question I had was, I know with the success of the PA out to the Corps, the federal government now is, I guess, investing in a nationwide climate corps
Yes.
and forest corps. Are there opportunities for synergy between the two, or is that will that potentially help fund some of the work DCNR is doing, or is that sort of a separate effort?
Nicole you can probably address that in her comments. We essentially, the federal agencies through AmeriCorps place people in their agency to work on climate related things. So we won't directly benefit, but if the more AmeriCorps, the more federal agencies use Corps members, we can certainly, like on project by project, coordinate with the AmeriCorps folks. In fact, Jake Newton, that many of you know in our agency, was AmeriCorps out of CEDACOG, and probably through NRCS or something, but his skill in doing electrical audits for the region and CEDACOG caught our attention when we set up a sustainability team.
We are watching it very closely. We just met with PennServe, which is the Pennsylvania office that manages the AmeriCorps for Pennsylvania. There is a lot of unknowns right now, mainly the funding. So it's basically an unfunded program currently. And so it's to determine how that funding might be distributed. We had submitted comments because we would like to see that programming help to support already existing programs like the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps that is doing a lot of the mission-based objectives of the American Climate Corps.
Good. So the conversation's happening.
Yeah.
That's good. Great. Any other questions for Secretary Dunn? All right, we'll turn to Nicole for her policy report.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, just welcome to our new council members. I know Sierra is not here, but Thad, your first meeting, and I wasn't here at the last meeting, so Ken and Jennifer, welcome to both of you as well. So as the secretary mentioned, we are thrilled that the Duke Lomoa is NOMOA, and I'm getting a lot of mileage out of that statement. I got your text last night.
I saw that in your notes, and I
was on a run, and I
hope you say that out loud.
That was pretty funny. So this was a grassroots effort, and I want to thank CONREC for engaging on this so early and submitting substantive comments throughout the process. For those who are new, this was the Maryland Air National Guard requesting to establish low airspace over a good chunk of the Pennsylvania wilds to fly A-10s, but also F-16s and possibly other type of aircraft as low as 100 feet. So currently there is an existing airspace, but that's at 8,000 feet. So a huge, huge difference. We, along with CONREC, had argued all along that they needed to complete a full environmental impact statement, really engage the public. There was not a single public meeting that was held by the Air National Guard. I am convinced that if we hadn't mobilized early on with such a diverse set of partners and constituents, with so many submitting comments during the NEPA process, that it would have been a foregone conclusion. And I don't say that, easily. The vast expansion of the Evers MOA in West Virginia occurred in approximately a year and a half. So it was the public was notified in June 2019, and the finding of no significant impact was finalized in December of 2020. So we were first notified in August of 2019. It was my first month on the job. And so we immediately responded with letters and concerns. But again, thanks to CONREC and to everyone out there for their work on that. As Silas mentioned, we've been working through some updates on our ATV policy. So just an overview of the revised policy, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know you are submitting some comments to me, which I appreciate it. So as you recall, we initially rolled out the ATV policy back in 2019. In that process, we did a pretty extensive public comment period, where not only did we present to the various councils like CONRAC, but we did some public meetings, and we put the policy out so that people could provide their feedback and input. And we received hundreds. I mean, I'm thinking it was maybe 800, 900 comments. It was pretty significant. So the policy hasn't changed dramatically from what was first finalized in 2019, which is why we're not putting it out for that full public process this time around. But we did feel that it was valuable just to share with the various councils. So sharing it with CONRAC, I addressed the Snowmobile ATV Advisory Council yesterday, the Pennsylvania Trail Advisory Council, Next Gen Advisory Council. So they will all have the opportunity to provide some input. I would say that the main changes in the policy include slightly increasing the permittable width and height limitations from 64 to 65 inches and 1,800 to 2,000 pounds respectively. This is just trying to keep kind of on track with where the industry is, while also creating limitations to support the limitations of our trails and kind of balance that with resource management.
What were those numbers again? 64 to 68?
64 to 65
65.
and 1,800 to 2,000 pounds. The policy also reiterates DCNR's criteria for expanding trail systems, which includes land ownership, resource management, visitor safety, and other operational considerations. We do have a provision in there that talks about written landowner easements. I do want to make it clear that the idea here is that, so there is a provision within the current policy where a 25-year written agreement is required. We're going to update the policy to reflect that really is specific to only when Bureau of Recreation and Conservation grant funding is being used to construct trails. Obviously, when DCNR funding, any public funding is being used, we want to make sure that we're maximizing the benefit for the public. But there are occasions where the Bureau of Forestry may look at an agreement, and it may be a much less term in number of years, and it works just fine, just in the case of the North Central Regional Trail. The policy emphasizes the establishment of strategic connectors, which we really think are important to connect riders from state forests to communities and businesses. You know, as was mentioned earlier, we did this tour last fall, met with some of the businesses. We're really excited to hear how the businesses reacted to the benefits of the trail, the potential of the connector, and how it really has supported their livelihoods. We're also obviously looking at how we can help support those multi-jurisdictional cooperative efforts that was mentioned in agreements to enhance those long distance riding opportunities off state forest lands as well. So really do appreciate your feedback. Like I said, other advisory councils are going to be weighing in as well. Once we have all of those recommendations, the policy still will have to go through the chief counsel's office. Just an update on the administrator. We still don't have an administrator, but we did put out another bid for that to help support the administrative duties of CONRAC. Hopefully we'll get some good candidates. Just a huge thanks to Ara and Morgan for helping with and supporting the council as we kind of work through all of that. And then as Silas mentioned, that we have the July field trip that we are working on. So we shared the agenda for our visit to the Endless Mountain region. That's July 23rd and 24th. We're asking council members to meet around noon on Tuesday, July 23rd. We're going to ask you to eat lunch or pack a lunch before you get there. We'll tour Miller Mountain, and which is a newly acquired parcel of the Pinchot State Forest. And then we'll travel to Vosburg Next State Park, where we'll offer a couple of different activities, kayaking and hiking. Bob has also secured the option for touring Deer Park Lumber in Taconic, And particularly that might come in handy if we have inclement weather or if it's really, really, really hot, right? So you can let me know if that's something that you're interested in or if you want to use it as a second option. So we have a block of rooms held at the Comfort Inn, could coordinate with ARA on your lodging. And I think most of you have submitted your forms. I might have to check in with you, Thad, on that one, and some of our newer members, but Ken, I know you had filled out. So I sent out a form just to kind of see what your availability is and what you'd like to do as a part of that trip. And that is all of my updates.
You'll provide the kayaks.
Yes, so we have so thank you to Jerry, who offered to bring 4 of his kayaks all the way up to the Taconic region. Yes, we do have a
All right. Thanks, Nicole. Oh, Thad.
Nicole, question for you, and thank you for your work on the Duke Loa issue. If the Guard had gotten their kind of politics in a row ahead of time better and public comment ahead of time better, would we be vulnerable to that having a higher likelihood of success next time?
So I think that the Guard did not do a great job of educating and engaging people. And so I don't want to necessarily give them tips on how to do a better job. But yes, I mean, we've seen it in other parts of the country where these very invasive, low-flying areas are established. And what my biggest concern was, so we knew the A-10 was going to be decommissioned. They announced it. They've been, the military has been looking to do this for many years. They finally got the authorization in 2022. We knew that they were going to be decommissioned by 2029. So what comes next? Most National Guards were converting to F-16s. 3 have converted to the F-35. So much more powerful, much noisier aircraft. So we are very concerned about, because this is, once an airspace is established, it's very unlikely that they are unestablished. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that just getting a very bipartisan group of people to understand the concerns, and also the fact that we had a conservation landscape established with so many people engaged. So the PA Wilds was such a tremendous asset because they've already recognized the value of this region, not only from a natural resource perspective, but from an economic livelihood perspective, which really helped tell the story as to why this could be so detrimental.
That economic part of it was really a major point, because I think Nathan Regner said that the outdoor recreation in the Pennsylvania Wilds generated, what, 4.1 billion last year? And that's no small change. And so I think that was one of the big concerns, as well as the safety, because we've got so many black holes in the Pennsylvania Wilds in terms of cell phone access. And one of the examples I used early on was that 2 of my friends were hiking on the Black Forest Trail. One fella fell and broke his leg, but the other fella couldn't get 911 on his cell, and to run back down to Slate Run. And then by the time he and the ambulance got there, the other fella had bled to death. So that was, those kinds of examples are real. They're not someone mouthing off in an imaginary way.
Bob.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thank you for allowing us to review the ATV policy, and I know that it will appear in CONRAC's letter, or at least I believe it will. I can't overemphasize the importance of that 25-year easement in that situation. I think, as we've learned from some of our current private landowner partners in the ATV project, that they want to go slow themselves. And I think it's just natural that any landowner would want to see what the impact's going to be and not commit off the start to a 25-year commitment. So thanks for reviewing that. And I just wanted to add my emphasis to the importance of that.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Thank you for flagging that early on. Really appreciate it.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Nicole? Alex is really the mic monitor today, I see. He said he couldn't hear you, Cindy.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that people who are joining virtually are getting the same experience.
We appreciate it, Alex. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think Cindy simply said, "Thank you, Bob, for your leadership on motorized recreation." So no, we need to humble you now. And I also want to say, I see there's a comment in the meeting chat. We do have, unless the secretary wants to respond now. Yep, go ahead, Cindy.
I know, just by, I mean, we normally don't do the audience questions. We do Conrad questions of me, but I'm happy to answer this. The comment is about the negative impacts of fracking on forests and the impacts of new well pads and impacts of pipelines. These are among the reasons that we have a moratorium on additional leasing of gas on the state forest lands. These, as we've studied and monitored, and if you look on our webpage, we have a constantly updated monitoring report. We used to publish a monitoring report, like I forget, like every 5 years. Now we decided as we get data, we publish it on our monitoring. We do monitor these impacts, and in general, fragmentation, invasive species have been the big impacts of the existing leases. And the existing leases are legal documents. They get to do their existing leases. They get to fulfill them. And then there are lands where the mineral estate is owned separately, where the companies who own the mineral estate have the right to drill and the right to create well pads and pipelines to access the ownership they have in the mineral estate. So we work with them to minimize the effect, but they're not affected by the moratorium. That's a good point raised. We are concerned about that, and that's why the moratorium. The question on Dimock, I can't really answer. We don't actually have a lot of land around Dimock. Our service foresters have our service foresters will look at private land anywhere and give advice. And I would just suggest that if someone wants a service forester, look at dying trees. Dimock probably in the Loyalsock area for our service foresters. So.
All right, thank you. Okay, we can move on to Eric and his legislative update.
All right. Good morning, everyone. As everyone knows, the budget season is upon us. After Memorial Day, things will start picking up. We have a meeting today with Representative Bradford, the Majority Leader in the House, Secretary Dunn, and I, and the others are going to go over there to meet with him today just to talk about our budget priorities, the governor's budget priorities for DCNR. So we're going to be doing that today. That's coming up very soon. So we're going to be leaving soon, 11:30. And then I'll just mention that the House is in session today. Yesterday, Nathan Rigner, our Director of Office of Outdoor Recreation, testified yesterday before the House Tourism Committee about the outdoor economy and tourism. There was a very successful hearing yesterday. A lot of members showed up, so it was great. And that's it actually right now for the ledge priorities. Any questions?
I don't think so. Thanks, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it. All right, we'll move to council business. We don't have any formal business today in terms of approving letters or comments, unless any other CONREC members have business they want to introduce. Okay, I didn't think so. I think we're good there. So we will move on to, well, first thanking the secretary for being with us. Thanks, Cindy.
Let's know how to make out with
Yep.
the majority.
Yeah, good luck.
Approach.
We will move on to Chelsea and the Next Gen Council Annual Report. You can feel free to come up to the mic. I'm sure. Thank you.
Everyone hear me? Maybe?
I think so, and Alex will tell you if he can't, so.
Okay. I am Chelsea Tarvel. I am a professional geologist with HDR Engineering as my day job, and I am part of the Next Gen Advisory Council for DCNR. I joined in 2023 and have been enjoying it so far. So I'm gonna do a little intro.
Chelsea, sorry, could you scoot the mic a little bit closer? I think they were saying they might have a little trouble.
Oh, now.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I was leaning too far back. Yeah, so Allie handed out a copy of our annual report that we put together. It's kind of a summary of what the Next Gen is and what we've been doing so far. Yeah, so the first page just kind of gives like a brief intro and some quick stats for you. There are 26 council members that represent 21 different counties throughout Pennsylvania, and the map actually has a little pinpoint as to where everyone is from. And we represent 4 different sectors. So we have anywhere from high school students to college grads, people who work in nonprofit and then for-profit. We hold quarterly meetings where we discuss different DCNR topics and different projects going on. So we hold them quarterly. There's been 8 of them so far, and we've had 26 DCNR guest speakers from 6 different bureaus. Of those, we usually get different projects from the different DCNR folks that come by and kind of give us an intro as to what they're going to be discussing or upcoming projects like the ATV one that you guys discussed. And from those, 17 of our committee members have already participated. The next page kind of gives a like, what are we type of thing. So we are a group of wide range of individuals. We've got anywhere, like I said, from high school up to young professionals, diverse backgrounds and geography locations. We are run by Allie, sitting back behind me, and Kelly McKinley. And our main goal is to serve as the voice for younger and diverse generations for DCNR work that comes into play, and to make sure that the voices are heard and the parks and trails are enjoyed by everybody. So the purpose of having a Next Gen Advisory Council, why it works well for DCNR and probably for other groups as well, is that we serve. A lot of things have changed over the past few years. In Pennsylvania in general, the diversity and ethnicity has changed a lot. The white population has gone down. African American populations have gone up. The overall ethnic population has changed by 33% just in the past few years. I believe this looks like the past maybe 10 years or something. But the staffing at DCNR still remains at 75% male and 98% white population, and not much has changed. So to try to bridge that gap, we have the Next Gen who has opinions from a younger generations, diverse backgrounds, geography, and such, and we're able to kind of bridge that gap and provide more insight. Yeah, and then as we all know, the lovely COVID that hit us. Everyone was going outdoors and participating more in outside things instead of doing indoor activities. So from 2018 to 2020, there's been a 97% increase. And from 2019 to 2020, there was still a 52% increase in people visiting parks. I don't know new stats or if they have new stats, but I imagine they have not changed much. There's still a lot of people that are still the lingering fear of being around people and still likes to go outdoors or realize this is actually a lot better than we thought and hang outside. Then we just have a list of all the folks that have been involved. We served 3-year roles. The first role was from 2021, and then we have some that are ending in 2024 with a chance for renewal. There's a whole renewal and reapplication process. And then there is the new group that joined in 2023. And then I believe another one is starting in July or August of this year, where we can get a new group of people and kind of circulate the group a little bit and continue with new perspectives. So like I was saying, we've had different guest speakers from within DCNR in the different bureaus. So on the Road So Far pages, we have all the different presentations that we've had since 2022 and the different speakers that we've had. So we've discussed anywhere from climate change, DEIB work, had the geologic survey, recruitment and retention, and a bunch of others. Different things on informing the next gen of what's going on at DCNR, and then they have different speakers that will come and give insight to the next gen group too, about like advancing careers and motivation and like getting out and enjoying the parks and different little things within there. More pages. And then we asked the DCNR folk who had done presentations if they wouldn't mind sharing a couple words and if they had key insights that they really saw, and some key words. So some of the words that they came up with that really spoke to them were perspective, optimism, hope, meaningful, and invigorating. What they saw from the group as while they were presenting or interacting with us, because it becomes a very open conversation. They do a little spiel and then they'll open the conversation up and get insight from us, and we'll talk to them. They appreciate our enthusiasm, curiosity, and commitment. And from what I got is that they haven't completely lost hope on the future generations. So hopefully that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So once they do their presentations, sometimes different projects will join from that, and they'll allow us the opportunity to kind of partake in them. We have the funding documents. So we've had a group of people that set up the regulations and the scheduling, procedures, and everything for the Next Gen group itself. We had the BRC public participation document, where groups set to provide recommendations for the public participation document for the C2P2 grants. And they focus on DEIB and technological languages to kind of more modernize them and get them up to speed with where we're at now, change a couple things. The Bureau of Forestry strategic plan, again, they provided insight as to how they saw the plan. I know you guys had a big impact on that too, and then it went to us, and we had a group that looked at it and shared their thought on it as well, provided an extra set of eyes. They looked at the DCNR DEIB definitions, really gave a new definition to the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging words, and gave them a more pinpoint definition. And then you have the annual report group. And there's always more groups going on. I know we have recruitment and tension that's going on. There's also the ATV trail and the DEIB resource library committees that are also starting up. There are a few other opportunities I could see listed, and there's always more to come. I think there's already some new ones that are in the works that already have been since this has been published. And then we asked some of our members from the Next Gen group what they're thinking about the organization so far. How do they feel the committee's running? How they want to be involved. So some of the comments that we have are shared on this page. They want to represent themselves, their communities, whether it's their culture, their geographic region, and and their generations even. We have everyone from if someone just graduated their sophomore year of high school. So, and what members are taking away from being in part of the council is they're really enjoying it. They're learning more about the DCNR, diversifying their own opinions, which can then provide insight onto different programs that are coming up in different committees, and being that they're enjoying that they're having an impact and actually being listened to on these different committees. What they feel, what it's like being a part of a committee, we've got more comments. They said they to glimpses to what's going on within the working process. They like working with like-minded people, strengthens their own groups, their own opinions and their own ideas, and just makes opinions and input more valuable to them. So the next one just kind of wraps things up. We've had a couple different ongoing leadership professional development opportunities that have stemmed just from being within the Next Gen group. We've had interns, different presentations, and so on, and they continue to grow, of course. And then some final thoughts is that we're having an impact on DCNR. I believe everyone is happy and willing to participate with not only from our side, but from the DCNR side as well. And we've had successful outputs and good collaboration between everything. And we believe we're having we believe, and hopefully DCNR also believes, that we're having a good impact on everything. So yes, and I want to thank you, the rest of my group that could not be here. We had Rachel, Kylie, Matea, and Maggie, who were not able to join, and then Allie and Kelly for running everything and really being excellent support system, and the rest of DCNR folks who either contribute by attending or silent contributors and supporters within. And you guys all for allowing me to listen to me. So you guys have any questions or comments?
Go ahead, Jerry.
First of all, I want to say that this report is impressive. You really did a great job, and not just because of the graphics, but the content. But the one thing that stands out to me is your map. I don't see people participating from Lycoming, Tioga, Potter.
No, right?
Why?
I'm not sure.
You got to recruit them, Jerry. Get those young people.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be glad to.
Right.
But I think, and it's not just because that's where I'm from, Lycoming County, but as you heard in the introductions, I'm involved with Pennsylvania Wilds, and I'd like to get Pennsylvania Wilds people more engaged.
Tell them to apply. I think Kelly said it opens in July. I think.
Okay. And there's 26 council members. Is that the max, or is it flexible? Yeah. Okay. Okay. And I know I asked this once before, but when we think about the ideal candidate for this in terms of age or point in their career, is there a sort of a sweet spot that you're looking at?
The application process said anywhere from high school to 35.
High school to 35.
Not sure how wiggly that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So 35 is how you identify an old person. I duly noted.
I'm not sure.
Some of us are past that.
I know it's painful to say, but just wanted to second Jerry and saying it's a really great report, and it's been fun to follow the council through periodic updates on all the activity. And what I really like about this report too is that it's not just about what the Next Gen Council is doing for DCNR. It's also what the council members are getting from the experience. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the mix, but is one of the most powerful pieces of it. And talk about workforce development. It's also a great way to expose people to all the good work DCNR does and hopefully latch them into the system and get them as future employees.
Conversation yesterday about, someone was like, how many positions are there within DCNR? Like how many different titles there are? And then they were like, we don't even know.
Hundreds probably, right?
But it was good for them to learn that.
And just one question, personally, how did you find out about council and what led you to apply?
So I work with the DEP on a lot of projects. So I was actually just looking for different documents and like Googling different maps or something, and ended up on the DCNR page and ended up, I think it was like one click away from that. And I was like, oh, what is this? And just hurried up and applied for it and ended up getting accepted. It was a very last minute. I may have even been a day late with the application.
Wow.
but-
So just by luck, you sort of stumbled
Yeah.
across it. Yeah, that's great. Any other questions? Yeah, Meredith?
Just want to say thank you, Chelsea, for coming. Like Silas mentioned, we've really enjoyed watching the council develop and hearing the updates. So thank you for coming. And I think it's fair to say we'd love to keep hearing from you.
Yeah,
Stay in
thanks for
touch.
having us.
Oh. The council size.
We strive for 25 council members, but where you can, sometimes it varies.
I do have one question. I do echo a lot of the sentiments shared so far. Thank you for your time and coming. As members of Next Gen roll off, I'm thinking of a 17-year-old that served their 3-year period. Is there an opportunity for them to re-engage in committee sessions, or what's a transitional plan to retain them into the Next Gen Council or potentially CONRAC other spaces?
I know there's a renewal period where I believe they can reapply for it. Oh, Ally left.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. I'll get on the mic here. So they can serve a 2-year term. We don't really have an after plan. So I think that's a really good point that we could consider. When we have people apply and when they don't join if they aren't selected to join the council, we do have a list of opportunities, and CONRAC is on that list of what other ways to engage in our department. We do offer an exit survey to understand maybe why they've decided to not up their term, if that's the case, or how their time on the council served them. But I do think maybe an opportunity for how to engage in the future is a really good idea. So I appreciate that. And I've connected with, this is relatively new, as many of you know. The council has only been around for 3 years. So people who have left, I do engage with them on a personal level, like on LinkedIn. So we definitely stay connected, but I think there's an opportunity to grow that. So I'd be interested to talk to you about that. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Would love that.
And the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps is a potential opportunity because we have both youth and adult crews. So that is a potential pipeline going forward. But yeah, it's a good point.
All right. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Great job. Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to Carissa, who I think is joining us virtually. And she's going to give us a presentation on the Bureau of Forestry strategic plan update that we've all been following.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can. It's a little bit quiet. Can you
Hold on.
turn up your volume or?
Let me give it a shot. How about now?
Still coming through a little quietly, I think.
Is this any
Coming up
better?
with It is better.
Okay. All
Folks
right.
online can hear it well.
All right.
We
Super.
can't turn that up on our end at all.
Just gonna get my screen pulled up. But thanks for having me here. Thanks for the time on your agenda. Um, all right. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, super. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Carissa Schnabel. I work for the Bureau of Forestry along with our planning team. So I think we last talked to you all for a broad update last summer. So we've made a lot of progress. I know some of you have come to some of our stakeholder engagement sessions. So I'm going to provide a brief overview today for you to remind you about the strategic planning process, how that has worked over time, where we're currently at in the process, give an overview of the current plan, tell you a little bit about the feedback that we've gotten so far from the strategic plan stakeholder engagement that we've done over the last month, and then end up with some next steps. All right, so first we'll talk a little bit about the process, and I realize that is in the way. Okay, so strategic planning is a process. We'll talk a little bit about the timeline here in a second, but you know, it starts with listening both to our folks in the field, what the public is asking for us as an agency, defining our lane and our role, really reflecting and clarifying our strengths, our opportunities, and then finally, you know, coming through to implement some changes and some strategic work. So what is our strategic plan? So as you all know, our Bureau of Forestry is nested within DCNR, and the Bureau of Forestry has a lot of responsibilities for the forests of Pennsylvania. So we steward 2.2 million acres of state forest land, and then we have additional responsibilities for the other roughly 9 million forested acres across Pennsylvania. So this strategic plan includes strategies to address forest conservation across the Commonwealth. So it includes not only our state forest lands that DCNR manages and stewards, but also, you know, those other forested lands that are in either other government agencies as well as privately owned lands. This is our highest level of planning document for our Bureau. And what it does is it seeks to meet the challenges of our changing environment, right? So both the environment that's physically out there in our forest ecosystems, but also kind of the social systems that have changed, the economic systems that are changing around us. It's intended to provide focus and to drive us in growth areas that have been identified either by our staff, by our stakeholders, and by the public. It's a first step to help us align our Bureau resources to help implement the plan, and it's a really good tool to communicate, you know, who we are, what we do, and our intentions to both our partners and to the public. So a strategic plan, how does it come to be? What does it do? So our strategic plan is fed by three things. It's fed by enabling laws and legislation, right? We're called and we're created to do certain things. As an agency and as a public-facing, public-serving agency. So those pieces are reflected in the plan. On the other hand, we also, you know, use professional judgment to determine our strategic direction, and that includes the professional judgment of not only our, you know, 700 plus staff that work for the Bureau of Forestry, but the professional judgment of our partners and key stakeholders as well. And then last but not least, you know, it's influenced by those societal values, what we're called to do by the public, what they're looking for from their forest lands. The strategic plan then feeds into other documentation, some of which might sound a little bit familiar. So on the state forest side of things, so these are the lands that DCNR and the Bureau of Forestry manage and operate. So we have our State Forest Resource Management Plan that directly feeds off the strategic plan, and then that's further broken down into each of our forest districts and their planning documents. Kind of in the middle is all of our program plans and guidance from our different programs and areas of work that we do. And on the kind of all forest side, so we have a Farm Bill required plan that covers all forests in Pennsylvania called the State Forest Action Plan. It was last written in 2020. It's up for a, not an update, like a progress report here in 2025, and then it'll be up for a review and being redone in 2030. So that also, you know, reflects some of the things in the strategic plan and beyond. Okay, so a little bit about our timeline to get us to the strategic plan. So we have been working on the strategic plan for a long time. I think we've come and talked with you all several times throughout this process. And it started back in 2017, collecting data, right? So this includes data that we collected from our staff, from our stakeholders and from the public. So we did some surveying of the staff, both within the Bureau and within DCNR, and we did some stakeholder and public input sessions from 2017 to 2021. From there, we, did a lot of writing and reflecting, and we had an internal draft that we released in 2022, and we did some internal feedback sessions with our staff. From there, we took what our staff had to say. We compiled their feedback, we edited the plan, and it went for executive review within DCNR. At the same time, we've been doing some other kind of changes and additions within our Bureau. So we had a consultant come in and do an organizational assessment to look at how our resources are used to meet our mission and to accomplish our work. We had some leadership change. So our previous Bureau director left us, and Seth Castle took the helm as Bureau Director for the Bureau of Forestry. And we had some more edits to reflect both that shift in leadership and the things that we learned about our agency and what it needs. This spring, we have now hosted the partner workshops. So we had 6 of them. 2 were in person. I know some of you attended those. And then we had 4 kind of topic specific ones that were held virtually. I know some of you attended those as well. And then next up is we're going to be soliciting public feedback here in June. Our plan from here is to edit the plan to incorporate the feedback that both our stakeholders, the public, and our staff have for us based on the current draft. From there, it'll go to executive and governor review, and then hopefully by the end of 2024, we will end up with a finalized plan. It only took 7 years. And last but not least, the thing that people always ask when it comes to any plan is the idea of implementation, right? We can write the world's best plan, but until we figure out how we're going to do it, where we're going to do it, the plan is only, as good as the paper it's written on. So we're really excited to move through the rest of these steps and get into that implementation planning. From here, I will shift to talk with you all about those plan components. So what are these components? So first off, we have a vision and a mission for our agency. I like to say that the vision is when we, as an agency, go to sleep and we dream our wildest dreams. What do we think of? What do we want for the future forests of Pennsylvania? And this is what we try to capture in our vision. It's this ideal future condition. Doesn't necessarily mean we're 100% going to get there, but we're dreaming the dream. Next up, we have our mission. It's a concise statement of what we, the Bureau of Forestry, are going to do to move us closer to achieving that vision. We have some guiding principles in the document. These are overarching cross-strategy ways of doing business, right? And we'll go over these all here in a minute. But these are the approaches that we take as we do the work itself. From there, we have really the meat and the heart of this plan. We have the goals and the strategies. So these are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve and the way that we're going to do it. It doesn't go really far into the nitty-gritty, again, like I said, of the how and the where and the when, but it takes, the tactics and the approaches and some of the tried and true and some of the new ways that we're going to approach this work and these goals. And last but not least, we have these 10-year challenges. These are ambitions that we share with the forest conservation community for us to all aspire to, right? So as we go about doing our mission, as we go about implementing these strategies and goals, these are things that we would like to see. This is an overview. We'll talk about all of these pieces in turn, but you can kind of see how they all relate to each other. So first we have that vision and our mission that are kind of guiding the whole process. And then we have 5 different goals in our plan, and they're broken into these 2 categories. So on the left, you see strengthening our resource management foundations. We're a resource management agency with a long history of stewarding our forest resources over time. And on the other hand, we have this area of growth, which again, we've done for a long time, but is really an area where we're starting to grow our muscles and stretch our wings. This growing around our work around people and communities. So you can see we have 3 goals that really are more people-centric, and then 2 goals that are resource-centric. So first off, we have our vision. So when the Bureau of Forestry goes to sleep and we count our sheep, we have this envision of what we want our future forests to look like. So the Bureau of Forestry envisions a Pennsylvania of abundant, healthy, resilient trees, forests, and native wild plants. We also envision an engaged populace that values and equitably receives the benefits of those resources. And last but not least, we envision people and communities across Pennsylvania that are inspired and empowered to steward those resources. How are we going to go from our current state to try to meet that vision? We're going to do that through our mission. The mission of the Bureau of Forestry is to conserve, steward, and enhance Pennsylvania's trees, forests, and native wild plants, and to connect with all of the people and communities that we serve. Next, we have our guiding principles. Again, these are the approaches, the tactics, the ways of doing business that we're saying that we as a Bureau, this is the way we'd like to operate. We'd like to meet, exceed, and uphold these principles as we do our work. We remember that we are trustees and stewards of our resources. We act as public servants, leaders, and advocates for those resources. We develop, inform, and guide policies for those resources. We're a science-driven and collaborative agency. We believe in inclusive and equitable services. We believe in diversity in all of its forms, both in the natural landscape and the human landscape. And we strive to be a high-functioning, effective, and efficient organization. All right, now we get into the really good stuff. So we have, like I said, those 5 goals. 2 of them are in this resource management foundations, and 3 of them are in this peoples and communities. So on the resource management side, we have a goal around ecosystems to ensure Pennsylvania's ecosystems are resilient, and one to make sure that we're preserving the societal benefits that we derive from those resources. On the people and community side, we have 3 goals. Our first is just simply called people, to connect all people with trees, forests, and native wild plants. Next, we have recreation and trails to provide diverse, sustainable recreation opportunities on state forest lands. And last but not least, this is a really interesting recent addition, this idea of workforce support, investing in our Bureau of Forestry and its people. So this one is more introspective within the Bureau. Okay, so we're going to dig into each of these a little bit. So if for our ecosystems goal within that resource management foundation bucket, we have this goal of trying to ensure Pennsylvania's ecosystems are resilient. And we do this through a few strategies. The first is to conserve native wild plants and biological diversity to support healthy forest ecosystems, enhancing the capacity of forests and forest products to store carbon and mitigate climate change, improving forest climate resilience and adaptation potential, restoring degraded ecosystems and ecosystem function, and managing our state forest system, those 2.2 million acres, by applying science-based ecosystem management. Again, in that resource management foundation bucket, we have the societal benefits. So conserving and enhancing the societal benefits of Pennsylvania's trees, forests, and native wild plants. We have 5 strategies here, and in the plan, each of these strategies have numerous sub-strategies and details of what these pieces mean. But some of the strategies include conserving working forests, supporting the value and role of sustainable forests in our economy, providing Pennsylvania forest-based products from state forest land, maintaining and improving ecological services that we derive from our trees, forests, and native wild plants, and managing wildland fire to protect life, property, and natural resources. Shifting over to the people and community side, we have this first goal around people. to connect people with trees, forests, and native wild plants. We want to make sure that we're serving an increasingly diverse public. We want to improve youth education regarding the importance and the value of trees, forests, and native wild plants. Leveraging outdoor environmental education for people of all ages to foster natural resource stewards and advocates and bring people along that pathway from awareness to stewardship. We want to strengthen our outreach and technical assistance programs available on private lands. We want to connect people to trees, forests, and native wild plants where they are in their communities. So that's both the communities that they live in as well as their social communities. And last but not least, enhancing trees, forests, and their benefits in our urban areas and in communities where people live. And recreation and trails. So this is recreation and trails on our state forest lands. So making sure that we're providing diverse, sustainable recreation opportunities on those lands. We want to do this by adopting and developing an adaptable model of sustainable recreation across the state forest system. We want to provide safe, high quality, and equitable access to that state forest system and state forest trails and resources. And last but not least, we want to promote human health through connections to trees and forested environments and other recreational resources. And our last goal is this idea of workforce support, investing in the Bureau of Forestry and its people and its staff. We want to do this by developing a change management framework to meet the goals in the new strategic plan. There's a lot of things in here that we have a really solid history in working on, but there's a lot of things in here that signal change and new approaches and new emphasis. So we want to make sure that we're supporting our staff to make those changes. We want to support employee engagement for all staff, investing in leadership and professional development, and developing and recruiting the next cohort of forest resource professionals, both for our Bureau and beyond. We also have these 10-year challenges, right? Like I said, when we're thinking about the how and how do we measure success, we think about what do we want to see in 10 years. So we have one on each side, on that resource management side and the people and community side. On the resource management side, we have this idea that we'd like to conserve, protect, and establish 250,000 acres of forest land across the Commonwealth. And on the people and community side, we'd like to connect people who live, work, and play in Pennsylvania with forests and trees, including the 13 million people who call the Commonwealth home. We have some details in there about what this looks like, some key strategies that we can use to accomplish this. So when we say we want to conserve 250,000 acres, what do we mean? We want to reduce forest loss. We want to restore forested acres, potentially permanently conserving more acreage, and increasing carbon storage on existing forest acreage. On the people and community side, some of the ways that we can connect people with our forest resources is to empower all of the people of the Commonwealth to experience forests or green space, interact with all of our 500 school districts across Pennsylvania, planting trees in communities, and planting and maintaining forested buffers where people live. So that's our plan. Like I said, we've done some feedback sessions with our stakeholders. So we'd like to share a little bit of the key themes that have come out. There was a lot of really strong support for this plan and excitement for the future. I like to joke that, no one really came at us with super sharp and pointy pitchforks. People were generally really excited, really supportive, very much in line with the work that our partners are doing, which we found really heartening that we were on the right track. But that said, folks did have some thoughts in terms of things that needed extra emphasis or things that needed to ring a little bit more clearly. So this idea of invasive species as a real threat to our forest health needed to be elevated a little bit. Folks identified that there's a need for staff support, resources, and capacity. Like I said, there's some of this work that we've been working on and have really good momentum on, but then there's other things, like I said, that require this investment and shift and And that requires people and resources and working with our staff to make sure that we're meeting these goals. And then last but not least, we wanted to make sure that we're balancing. We're hearing this need for balancing and retaining our identity as, the manager of state forests while we manage for multiple uses, making sure we don't lose the core of our identity by trying to reach more people. These are our preliminary thoughts that me and the rest of the team that works in planning kind of put together. But we hired a consultant to help us with our stakeholder feedback sessions. So we'll be hearing from them, I think next week, with their kind of more thorough themes and feedback that they'll be sharing with us. So like I said, from here, we're going to be working with our consultant, and they're going to be providing a summary of all of the feedback from those stakeholder sessions. We have a survey that's open to our staff for them to provide additional feedback on the current draft. And then we're also going to be doing a public town hall in June. So it'll be live via Teams. Folks will be able to take a look at the draft ahead of time and provide feedback. I think both in the session as well as survey. From there, like I mentioned before, we're going to finalize the plan. So once we take all of the feedback from the stakeholders, from the staff, from the public, we'll put it together and we'll compile a new version of the plan. From there, it'll go to the departmental executive office as well as the governor's office for review and approval. And then comes implementation planning. So taking the plan from this kind of high level, we know we want to do this, but thinking about the when and the where and the who for our work that happens both on and off state forest land. And we're hoping to become more timely and more adaptable, and really we're rethinking the way that we do our planning. So a lot of our current plans have sort of like a cyclical timeline to them. I mentioned that one that is a Farm Bill requirement, that forest action plan. So that timeline is set for us, but the ones that we create for ourselves, how can we make these integrate better, and how can we make sure that the timelines are something that's real and makes sense, and that those plans can actually feed into each other in a way that feels organic and feels helpful. Last but not least, we're taking additional feedback. We set up a resource account to take. I'll pause here in a minute for questions or comments. I know, like I said, some of you came to the sessions over the last couple of weeks, but we do have this email address to take additional thoughts, comments, things that are missing, things you'd like to see added. So that is open and available to you all. And last but not least, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your time on the agenda. I know that you all have a lot to get through. Thank you for your support as we go through not just this planning process, but we go about doing our work. And that's all that I have in terms of presentation. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Well, thanks so much for your presentation. I should have said at the beginning, I know this is a busy day for Bureau of Forestry. I think they're having a management meeting, so thank you for joining, even if it had to be remote today. I know lots of our members have been providing feedback throughout the process. Any questions for Carissa, or any observations that you had from the sessions you participated in, Jerry?
Could we get a hard copy and plus an online access to that?
To today's presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. That's something you can help with, Nicole. Okay, great. We'll share it out. Yep.
It was excellent.
Bob, any observations from the one you participated in you'd like to share?
I think we were just encouraged by the even through the body language and the apparent interest of the Bureau of Forestry and what the citizens were saying. I was heartened to see that some of the things that we said that hadn't been contemplated are now being contemplated, and I expect that we'll see them when the consultant reports here in a couple of weeks. So it was a good process.
Right.
Question for Carissa or for Nicole. How sensitive is the information that we just saw, knowing that the final report isn't out yet?
So
Are you
that's
asking whether you can share this information?
I wouldn't plan to forward or share that anywhere, but the knowledge that we are now armed with that we wouldn't have if we weren't in this meeting today, how sensitive is that, given that hasn't been released to the public?
This is a public meeting, so this is open. This is, you are more than happy to share the presentation that we received, and you'll get it from Silas after the meeting.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I should also note that the plan itself is going to be posted on the website ahead of the public town hall. So the whole plan will be open to the public here in the next couple of weeks.
Great. And for what it's worth, I think your summary slide from what the staff's initial takeaways were is very consistent with what we heard on some of those calls and in the room. And that last bullet about continuing to strike a balance between the multiple uses of the state forests and not lose sight of, the original mission of Bureau of Forestry. I think that was all heard loud and clear throughout the process. So thank you again for being with us. We appreciate it, and we'll continue to follow the process as it moves along.
Great. Thank you so much all for your time.
All right. So now we'll move on to Brandon Hoover. Brandon's been hanging with us all morning. So thank you, Brandon, for being here in person to provide an update on the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. Up, and you got to hit the button to unmute.
I did. All right, there we go. I'm on. Thanks for having me. I'm going to try to plow through this because we got about 12 minutes, and I think we can get through a good amount.
You have a little more leeway.
A little more, okay.
You got to go right in there.
No, I'm all right. I
lunch.
just know that I see lunch over there, and a hungry pack of wolves and lunch don't go well together. Thanks for having me. I'm the SCORP specialist. I am responsible for walking the Commonwealth and DCNR through the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. I do so with Alex, who's on the call, and I think he can hear me. The SCORP is required. It's a precursor. It's required in order to receive Land and Water Conservation Fund money. So Land and Water Conservation Fund was established back in the 60s. It is fees essentially from offshore natural gas exploration and drilling and offshore oil drilling. So it is federal money that is coming from a fairly unfortunate source for conservation purposes, but it is going to conservation in the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So in order for us to qualify for this, we have to have a comprehensive plan that outlines how we as a Commonwealth could potentially utilize those funds. So that translates to roughly about $11 million, $12 million annually from the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And as Cindy, Secretary Dunn shared earlier, that is incredibly valuable money given the amount of grant applications that we receive in BRC alone, let alone other types of funding priorities. First established in 1964, I think we're well over $200 million in federal money from the Land and Water Conservation Fund from the 1960s. The graphics there, you can see kind of just seeing the graphics from the 1960s, not the aesthetic quality of the graphics. I don't know, there's some value in throwback imagery, but I think it shows also what we were valuing in the 60s. You see a lot of sportsman type recreation, right? And that has shifted over time. And so what we're here to do, and I'll jump back to, like I said, I'm going to try to plow through some of this. What we're here to do is try to, in some way, identify the trends that are happening, right? So every 5 years, we have to update this plan. And what we're in the process of right now is identifying trends and doing a lot of research to understand kind of where outdoor rec is at. The last plan that we put together was kind of finalized in late 2019, early 2020. And as we know, things went haywire shortly thereafter. And so trends have shifted. And so I'm going to talk about some of those trends here and plow through some of that. The way we're doing that here, we're doing it through all 5 of these are influencing where the outdoor rec plan is going. So the Lion Poll, these are 2 really important differences here. The Lion Poll is a statistically representative sample of Pennsylvanians. So as I go through some graphs and imagery, if you hear me say Pennsylvanians, X, Y, and Z, it means that we have a statistical representation of that data set, and we are able to, with some degree of confidence, say that Pennsylvanians as a whole are trending in one direction or another. If you hear me say enthusiasts, that is our public survey, which is open right now and closes actually today, is our last day for public input. That is, we can't say with any degree of confidence that it represents Pennsylvanians. For example, it is approximately 93% white in terms of respondents. That is not the representation of Pennsylvania. It is also the majority of responses are well over the median household income for Pennsylvania. So very valuable data, but it is not statistically representative. So 2 very important distinctions. We have a provider survey, which is targeting land managers or rec providers, and that's going out to folks who are doing and providing programmatic or other types of recreation opportunities. We are doing a spatial economic analysis. Actually, Silas is helping us with this. We're doing a spatial economic analysis using crowdsourced cell phone data. I'll go back. Crowdsourced cell phone data. And a company called Placer AI to understand a little bit more the economic trends and behavioral trends or how people are moving in and around our recreational spaces. And then we have a number of stakeholder group meetings that we're working to get on the calendar with diverse communities as well as communities who are physically disabled or have challenges recreating in some of our spaces. So I'm going to jump through the timeline here. The big one is that we are right here in data collection and analysis, and we are going to be doing a lot of writing and draft plan recommendations. We owe the National Park Service a draft in the winter, so December-ish. And then we will have some in winter, spring, we will have plenty of revisions and public comment periods and open for discussion. All right, so here's the trends. The trends, this is a representation of our public survey where people are taking our survey. You can see some of the hot spots. Those are the shaded areas represent quantity, how many people in those areas are taking the survey. Each dot represents one zip code. So you can just see we have, not surprising, the population densities are lighting up, but we have fairly good representation from around Pennsylvania. This was snapped a few weeks ago, so that has shifted and changed. We're going to geocode all our responses here probably by next week after the survey closes. We do have some representation from outside of the state. Interesting to see. We'll manage some of that data a little differently to understand kind of how people outside of the state are viewing our recreational opportunities. Statistical survey. So we can say most Pennsylvanians love walking and running, right? We combined a lot of these resources, a lot of these activities based on the assets that are required to do those activities. But you can see walking and running, not surprising, high percentage of Pennsylvanians, well over 60-some% are walkers or runners. It shows the value of not just our trail networks, but our sidewalks as well, right? And so I think that's a really important asset for particularly as we think through active transportation. But you can see here some really passive recreation as well. Visiting historic sites, scenic driving is always really popular, which is fascinating to me. But I think it's great that people enjoy getting out and seeing our forests. I'm imagining a lot of that is like leaf peeping and other things like that. This is our enthusiast survey. So very similar trends, although we gave a lot more options to our enthusiasts. So you can see kind of markers here. It really drops significantly from the walking, running, and hiking and backpacking, which is almost 70% of our enthusiasts are doing one of those or both. Drops down below 50% for scenic driving, camping, passive recreation like relaxing, reading, hammocking in parks, things of that nature. And then we can kind of see another drop off here when we get into fishing, hunting, mountain biking, motorized trail use, and it kind of goes on there. Some really interesting things. What we are doing and what we have the capability of doing is actually cross-tabulating each of these activities with specific demographics. So if you're really, really interested, let me know. We can certainly talk about it. If you're really, really interested in seeing like, okay, well, what are swimmers and waders also doing? Or what's the income split between swimmers and waders and another type of activity? I just did this presentation for the ATV Council yesterday, and I was able to pull out some particularities of how ATVers were like different behavioral trends specifically to the ATV group. So if you're really, really, I'm not doing that for everything. Like I don't have time to like split each and every one of these, but if there's particular things that you're interested in, I'm happy to talk more in more detail. This is the other category. So if we didn't capture it, you can see geocaching here is a really big one. Golf, we did not have that on there. A lot of folks our enthusiasts are also golfing. It's my guilty pleasure. I don't like to admit it. They're ecological deserts, golf courses are, but they are. It is still an enjoyable activity. What's one thing you would like to try? Kayaking. That was the case 5 years ago. It is still the case now. A lot of people would really enjoy trying kayaking, but haven't. You can see pickleball spike on there as well, but otherwise it's fairly dispersed. This is the one that's really exciting. How often are people recreating? What we really like to see here is that folks who participate in an outdoor recreation at least twice per week, so 2 or more times per week, increased 10% compared to 5 years ago. Right, so there's the number that we're seeing and how significant outdoor recreation, how overrun or how often people are getting out onto the trail, into our local parks, onto golf courses, whatever it might be. 2 or more times per week, 10% increase from 5 years ago. That is a significant increase when you're looking at 13 million people roughly. And this is the statistical survey. This is the statistical representation. And 92% are doing that at least once per year. So right, we can say over 9 out of 10 Pennsylvanians are recreating in our public or in some cases private lands. The majority of them are doing so at local parks, so local municipal county parks, local trails, local public pools, or local recreation areas. So the value of having recreation in your backyard, majority are doing so primarily in those local areas, with our state parks, forests, or game lands being a close second as the primary place that people are recreating. I'll go through this briefly, the potential for the economic impact. The blue is the statistical poll. The red is the enthusiast poll. Not surprising, you can see the enthusiasts are spending money at local establishments at an significantly higher rate than our statistical representation. But even then, we can say 50% of Pennsylvanians, over 50% of Pennsylvanians are spending money at local establishments during outdoor recreation. Right, so specifically connected to outdoor recreation, they're spending money, and that's something that we really, I think, fits well with some of the stuff that Nathan has talked about with the GORP report that came out back in January, February. What are people spending money on? A lot of it clothing, shoes, and equipment purchases, but plenty on lodging, transportation, passes, tickets, registration, licensure, events. So events we're seeing are becoming more and more popular, whether they're running events, charity events, biking events, concert events. People are spending money on outdoor recreation on events, which I think is something for us to spend time and take a look at. And a lot of people are spending well over $500 annually, with a good portion, roughly a quarter of our enthusiasts, again, this is enthusiast data, roughly a quarter spending over $2,000 annually on outdoor recreation. So that's a decent amount. That's a decent amount of money. The majority of our enthusiasts, though, were coming from household incomes that range between $75,000 and $125,000. The median household income for Pennsylvania is $74,000. So our enthusiasts generally are above the median household income for the state. So maybe not surprising that they're willing to spend a little bit more. They're doing events, so public arts events, crafts, concerts, things like that are really popular. You can see cultural historic events. If you're in Pennsylvania, if you're here in Harrisburg, that would be something like Capona, right? Different types of events like that. But we're seeing here a lot of road running, fishing events, relatively high. This is what I do in my spare time, is the bicycle racing. And so you can see here events are popular, but trail off a little bit compared to, right, public concerts in our public spaces. This is incredibly, we agree on it. We agree on outdoor recreation. This fits with national data, the National Park Service. 80% of Americans have a high favorability rating of the national parks. It's the highest federal agency. DCNR and our public lands is very similar. Not a whole lot of difference between Republicans, Democrats, or other in the amount of money or the type of investment that should be made in our outdoor recreation spaces. So very, very bipartisan in terms of a social issue. I'm going to jump through some of these for the sake of time. Barriers here. You can see our enthusiasts, a lot of them, nothing prevents me from outdoor recreation. The one I want to highlight here is the gender differences between barriers and outdoor recreation. You can see here for women in particular, nobody to go with. 23% of women said nobody to go with was their highest barrier, compared to 14% men. Environmental hazards such as ticks, extreme heat, mosquitoes, fairly statistically significant difference between men and women here on environmental barriers. And then safety concerns, right? So fairly big difference in safety concerns as the primary barriers between men and women. So again, this is an example of the way we can kind of splice some of this data and look at what programs or what types of interventions we might look at in a recreation plan to try to address some of these inequalities.
And is this based on the public survey or on the?
This is based on the public survey. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry for that. Thanks for that clarification. Jump through some of this here. Diversity, right? So similar to gender differences, this is the statistical representation, the Lion poll. You can see that the majority of people strongly disagree with the statement, "I've avoided outdoor recreation spaces because I don't feel welcomed." So generally speaking, we can say that our outdoor recreation spaces are fairly welcoming to people, right? Because a lot of people are showing up here that they disagree. But when we dig into the data a little bit more, those who strongly agree or even agree that outdoor recreation spaces are not welcoming, we're seeing a very big split in racial and ethnic demographics. So 6% of Asians strongly agreed that it's not welcoming. 12% of Black or African American respondents strongly agreed that outdoor rec spaces are not welcoming. 11% of Latinos, compared to only 1.7 or less than 2% of white respondents strongly agreeing with that statement. So we're seeing a statistical difference here that I think needs to be looked at and addressed a little bit more, even though that for the most part, we do see a strong disagreement with that statement that folks aren't feeling welcome. Just my concluding thoughts here. We have conservation, which I didn't get to, continues to be a high priority even for our enthusiasts, even over and above investment in trails and other things. So we want to see that the land that we do have is conserved. Barriers exist. They still exist. We need to address those barriers. We need to talk about them. We need to continue to think through programming to address them. And then our enthusiasts are willing to spend money. Just to kind of reiterate the value of the economic development of outdoor recreation. So I'm going to finish with that. I hope I didn't overwhelm you with data. There's enough data here to last me a year. So we can certainly talk about splicing it in all sorts of different ways, but I'll stop and take questions if you have any, or happy to talk offline.
Well, thanks, Brandon. That was a lot of good information in a very short period of time. And I just, before you open up the questions, just want to note how unique it is in the history of doing SCORPs that we have a Brandon who is focused on this. In the past, it was sort of BRC staff tag teaming it on top of all their other jobs. So I think it shows a commitment to doing a really thorough strategic SCORP that Brandon's on board, and obviously he's doing a great job. So thank you. Jerry?
It was an excellent presentation, and I can find a dozen ways that I want to use this. So I need hard copies and electronic copies.
Yeah, electronic copies are available. They already sent them to Nicole this morning. There's a PDF that'll be available.
But can we get the hard copies? Because my printer just won't capture all.
I could probably run upstairs and print off the presentation.
No, not today necessarily, but
at some point, yeah. So the other thing is all of this data will be made publicly available as appendices in the actual plan, which will be posted online. So our Lion Poll, our public survey, our provider survey, any work we're doing on spatial analytics, all of this will be in appendices in the actual final plan, which will be available here in a few months to a year.
But I think many of us on this CONRAC can be your advocates if we've got some of those materials to show the groups like the Williamsport Business Association or the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership. You know, those are audiences that can really magnify your message.
Is there a technical advisory committee? Or I know this in the past, the process has been a little bit different.
Yeah, that was one of the things I plowed through. We do have a technical advisory committee. It's made up of about 40-ish members from various constituency groups around the state. One of the things that of the DCNR's advisory councils, the only specific advisory council representation is from NextGen. So we don't have any other specific advisory council representation. It's mostly folks from nonprofits or other planning commissions or other agencies like transportation, education, things like that. Health has representation on there. So, but yes, we do have a technical advisory committee. Yeah.
I believe Marcus is also representing CONRAC.
Ephraim?
I had a question on infrastructure specifically. It looked like it was probably built into a lot of the different elements of the plan. Is that intentional, or is there also did infrastructure or the did that show up in any different ways, like as a barrier or needs?
Yeah, so it's interesting you bring that up. Infrastructure and maintenance is actually going to be, it seems like it's unfolding to be one of the key priority areas of the planning process. So we have 5 key priority areas. We'll have goals and action items under each of those. Infrastructure and maintenance has kind of risen to the top as a really, really important need, which Secretary Dunn talked about with trails. So yes, we're talking about that. We're thinking through what that looks like in terms of setting goals and action items. In terms of the data, infrastructure, and I skipped over that slide. Infrastructure is a high priority investment from the public. It is not the highest priority. The highest priority continues to be conservation, but it is a high priority for the public, and we're listening and putting it together as a high priority area in the actual plan.
Part of the reason why I ask is we have an infrastructure committee here on CONRAC, and we've been trying to figure out how to operate with this. So I think we could be a resource potentially for that specific.
That'd be great, because we're trying to figure out what does it look like to put specific goals and action items together under that category. Yeah.
I've got one question. Brandon, it's been a true pleasure to work with you on this project. It's been a lot of fun. I ask, as the survey closes today, structurally, is there anything feedback-wise that you're considering now as a submission to DCNR moving forward with the engagement session? I mean, I think for one thing on my end in the students community, network that I work with, the condensed feedback session of potentially 30 days, 45 days is very difficult to be able to receive, that 5,000 to 10,000 respondents that we're hoping for.
Yeah.
Is there any other structural things that you're thinking of that might be useful to take note of?
Yeah. So we are, it was quick. It was 30 days for the public survey. We tried to do a blitz. What we are doing once we kind of have a draft together of goals and action items, we want to make sure that that's available for public comment. And so the goal would be to do, and Alex and I are talking through what this exactly looks like. The goal would be to do a handful of in-person sessions kind of around the Commonwealth, and then a number of virtual sessions as well. So I imagine we'll probably have like a good 40+ day period, because what we'll do is we'll get a draft to NPS, and then during that process, before a final draft is done, we'll have some public comments. So we'll get NPS comments back, we'll get public comments back, and then we'll kind of use those to finalize things. So we don't have anything formalized just yet, but we are aware and in conversation of kind of thinking through what that looks like. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Brandon, for all the good information, and we'll continue to follow along. Thanks. I think in the interest of time, if it's okay with everyone, we can hold our work group updates to our working session, and just open it up for our final public comment in case we have received anything online. And I don't believe we have. So is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. Be able to do an announcement this afternoon.
If there's anything you want the public to hear, this would be the time. If it's just for CONRAC, then we can do it during our working session. Okay. Yeah, we can do it during our working session. Okay. Bob, a second. All right. All of those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.